Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Green Zone podcast with your host, Cameron Green. That is me, the host of this show, if you want to call it here. Next episode here on the Green Zone podcast. I want to welcome all you Green Zoners back. Our second to last episode before we hit the Christmas break. So we'll be trying to get a lot of baseball talking here today. A lot has happened since we last talked a week ago. So we're gonna hit some of that MLB free agent stuff, and we'll talk about some NFL stuff, and we'll also get to our weekly picks segment like we do every single week here on this podcast. So it should be fun. We'll tune in here. We'll start off in baseball because the last time we talked, Juan Soto was a free agent, and on today, December 13th, 2024, Juan Soto is now a member of the New York Mets on a 15-year, $765 million contract, not including a signing bonus, I think of 75 million. Correct me if I'm wrong, as well. So this makes Juan Soto the highest paid player, not just in Major League Baseball, but sports history, and that's a lot to say for a guy who, he gets on base at a historic pace. He hits for extremely high average, extremely high home run rate, drives a lot of guys in. I think when you look at the getting on base is the biggest thing I want. So separates himself from the rest of the pack. And we look at other players in baseball today. They really don't get on base as much as Juan Soto does, even a little bit. But 15 years, 765 million. That's about 51 million a year. I'm shocked. I had him going back to the Yankees. But what we're hearing about the recent, news coming out about how he hasn't talked to any of his New York teammates since the World Series, to me is a little bit concerning. I think maybe he already kind of knew that he was going to be kind of out the door, and the rest of the year is more so a showcase year. Um, I think we'll hear more from, I mean, probably not Aaron Judge, but other teammates from him in New York at the Yankees. You would think come baseball time that season, you might hear some stories of Soto maybe not being as close to the Yankees as possible or some other things like that. But for the first time, it feels like ever that the Mets have actually beat the Yankees at a free agent in a showcase. And you know what? If I'm Juan Soto, good for you, man. You got 765. You're now the face of the franchise, or at least you want to say like the dynamic duo with him and Lindor, because Francisco Lindor could lead a franchise on his own. He has for the last 5 or 6 years in New York, at least. But Juan Soto, man, like my biggest question, my takeaway from this is what does this mean for the rest of Major League Baseball? Um, I think in a lot of ways it comes down to things that you look into what goes in like the NFL that takes quarterbacks year in and year out. The newest quarterback who gets the deal gets the highest one, regardless if they deserve it or not. But 765 is the new. That's the standard of the highest paid in baseball. Um, I remember being in high school. Shout out Buffalo High School. When Harper and Machado and those guys signed, it was 10 years, 330 million dollars, and I thought that was insane that a player's gonna make almost $30 million a year. And in just 4 or 5 years, we're doubling those contracts, and the length isn't getting that much longer. You look at the Harper deal; it's like 10 years, 330. Soto for 5 more years, it doubles the what they're making, the total contract. It's insane that he gets $765 million. I thought he was not going to get more than maybe 650, maybe 680. But when you look at what Shohei Ohtani does, both when he's pitching and hitting, and we saw this year that he now can steal bases at a historically high pace. Um, I didn't think a guy who excels at getting on base and hitting home runs, but doesn't necessarily have the best speed, doesn't play the best glove. It feels a lot the hand that off to him. I don't know if the Mets will regret that. Well, time will tell about that. But man, I think you look at guys now. Who's the next one to get past $765 million? I mean, I think we're looking at guys like Ellie De La Cruz, Gunnar Henderson. I think you're just looking at dudes who will be superstars in the game of baseball that already don't have contract extensions. I would say Bobby Wood Jr., but he just signed that super long deal to Marina Royal basically for life. And I don't know. Got to find that next big guy that plays every day and does all these things that Juan Soto does too, but I feel like there's other players in baseball that do things that he doesn't. I'm not saying it's a bad signing. I'm not trying to rip Juan Soto here. Going over this contract, just seeing what this means for baseball. But I just think 15 years, 765 is a lot of money for a guy who is really good at one thing and maybe average or below average at everything else. I, it's not a stretch to say that he's not the best fielder in baseball. I don't think it's a stretch to say he's a below average fielder in baseball. It's not a stretch to say I think he's not one of the faster players. He doesn't steal bases. He doesn't do all of these things, but he's probably a top three hitter in baseball, you know? But he is probably trying to think in my head here. I think he is probably the most feared hitter in baseball. Like you don't really go after Soto. You don't pitch around other guys to get to Soto. You walk Soto to get to other guys. So I think he is probably the most feared pitcher in baseball. But that's a lot of money for the Mets to hand that out there. And if you're the Yankees here, they pivoted. They pivoted now, and Max Fried signed the other day the largest money ever signed to a left-handed pitcher. That 8-year contract that he signed there. I mean, if I'm a Yankee fan, though, I'm trying to spend as much money as I can, or at least I'm hoping that the Yankees have that money because if you had this money freed up to go get Juan Soto, you better damn well have more money to get other players, and they done that. Fried's a Yankee. About 10 minutes before that we found out we were going to be going on here, Devin Williams is now a Yankee. They traded away Nestor Cortez to Milwaukee. Are you adding more money? You're freeing things up a little bit. Are you going to lock down Devin Williams for a longer term deal? Um, being closer for the Yankees is one of those premier jobs in baseball. But I think you have to look at the first base market now. You have to go after Christian Walker, Pete Alonso, or Cody Bellinger. Those are the three guys that you have to look at and say, I mean, that's that's what you got to attack. You're pretty much set at a lot of other positions. You got Volpe at short and Jazz Chisholm at third. Glaber, I think, will walk this year. I think Glaber walks, and then you got Stanton and Judge and Verdugo. Like you don't need a lot else in other positions, but that first baseman hole. I would love to see Anthony Rizzo go back to the Cubs on a 1-year deal. Maybe this could be it for Rizzo, but you have to address that first baseman issue here, and that's Pete Alonso. That's Christian Walker. That's Cody Bellinger. And I think Bellinger might be the one you go after. But at the same time, too, that outfield of Stanton's going to DH. Jason Dominguez, who we've been talking about here for like 4 or 5 years now. He's got to be in that opening day left fielder spot or right fielder spot if you're going to put Verdugo in left or right and then Judge in center. But if you're the Yankees here, man, there's more money to be made out there in free agent value. I think the first baseman is what you go after. But if you want to try and make a Corbin Burns offer, I mean, you could certainly do that. But I think there's another team that probably needs to do that too, and that's a team that got another kind of ace caliber player um, days ago, and that's the Red Sox. Garrett Crochet is a Boston Red Sox here after getting a few trade prospects there. Not really surprised that Chicago flipped him because I think that was the best move for them. And I think Luis Roberts should probably be flipped as well. If you're the White Sox, you just need to address the fact that it's going to suck for about 4 years, 5 years until Reinsdorf really sells the team. But you're going to start from the bottom. You're going to start from the bottom and you're going to have to work yourself back up. I'm looking here at free agents that are still available. I mean, I predicted Jurickson Profar is going to go back to San Diego. I think Bregman's going to the Nationals. I think that. I think he's going to do it. And they're all predictions. Who are we kidding? Who are we kidding? We don't know any more than anyone else. But I think Bregman fits really well with the Nationals style here. And I think the Red Sox, man, you pivot and you go towards Corbin Burns. You get Crochet. You add Corbin Burns. That's a serious rotation now that you have to look at what you have. You'll have Brian Bayo, uh, Crochet. If you got Burns in that mix, man, because you missed out on Freed, you missed out on Snell, you missed out on Eovaldi. Severino to the Athletics to me just seems like a ridiculous amount of money paid for Luis Severino. I mean, I don't think Luis Severino really had any. You got to go where that money is. The prediction here, he was going to make 3 years, 48 million. 16 million years sounded about right. And then you look and you see you got 67 million from the Athletics to get 22.5 million a year. Yeah, like I kind of get that. That Luis Severino goes to the Athletics. Or if you're the Red Sox, you bring back Nick Pivetta. That's a cheaper deal, 15 million a year, because you're gonna have to sign Crochet to an extension. That probably gets him anywhere from 15 to 25 million. I know it's a big range, but you're gonna have to pay him at least something there. Um, I don't really know other guys out there that you really want to go after um, that are starting pitchers, and that's their biggest flaw because the best starting pitcher available here is Burns, but Flaherty and Sean Manaea, Andrew Heaney are, I guess, the next of the best ones available. Pivetta, I think Nick Pivetta is a really solid pitcher. I really do. But if he denied a qualifying offer of $21 million a year to come back there, I think he's going to probably find a deal elsewhere. Get himself probably as close to 21 to 25 million a year. It'd be fun to see if a team would throw itself in the hat here. I like when I see a smaller market team that you didn't expect to go after get a guy. Like I mean, like Luis Severino. Like I know the Athletics, that's kind of surprising for them, but like that kind of resets the power dynamic in baseball every now and then. And then you see some of those acquisitions like Freed for 218 million dollars, and you go, that's why I'm tying my kid's hand behind his back or his right hand, and that's why he's gonna be a left-handed player if he's gonna play baseball or the basket. It's like that's baseball is it, man. That's what everyone wants to do when you talk about guaranteed money, guaranteed contracts. But I think you could also look at and go after Jack Flaherty, but Jack Flaherty, I think with the Dodgers signing back Snell, Flaherty is probably less likely to go back to the Dodgers. I'm not surprised here if Flaherty goes back to Detroit and just sign another similar deal like that of maybe working around 20 million a year, maybe get 100 million for 5 years. I mean, Flaherty to Detroit, Flaherty to I'm trying to think of those mid-market teams that might use another pitcher. I know Houston's got plenty of them. That American League, maybe Kansas City. Man, it'd be kind of nice. Cleveland. I know they brought back Shane Bieber, but and we'll see what happens there with some of these teams. But the Mets right now getting aggressive. They're the ones that are leading the free agent market right now. And I like to see that baseball can basically pick back up now that Soto's signed. It's kind of like last year with Ohtani. His free agency stops and pauses for the free agent here, and then they can finally get back to what baseball is, the free agent market there. I want to pivot here because I had an episode last week talked about the head coaching carousel, and I mentioned Bill Belichick being in that mix for being a head coaching candidate either in Dallas, some of these other places. But man, Bill Belichick going back to college. I did not see that one coming. I don't think anyone saw that coming even a little bit. And it kind of makes me wonder, is that just to get out of that NFL system and you feel like no one hired you last year because you are going to basically hire Belichick to come in and change the whole system as GM and everything and whatnot. So, you're going to look at that and that's going to be different, but you're going to look at other things too. And he gets full control of a college program. He gets full control over, who comes in, who's playing here, who's doing this. He's kind of almost like a GM in a way for a college program. I just think it's gonna be so weird to see Bill Belichick on the sideline coaching 17-year-olds. It's gonna be a fun little. We'll be able to see here, but we will all. I'll tell you what though, we will all care about North Carolina football way more. Um, starting next year, that'd be a fun thing for the ACC, and I think it's a lot of fun to see ex NFL coaches back in college too. Well, it's Bill O'Brien at Boston College. We know Lane Kiffin. It probably is more of a resume in college and he does the pros. But like Bill O'Brien's a guy like, hey, that's an established NFL coach going back to college. Everyone likes seeing Pete Carroll back at USC when he was there. It's kind of fun. It's fun seeing those guys back in college, back when I could call it simpler times or whatever. But it'll be fun to see Belichick back there in a different arena capturing the college game. I want to step into our weekly picks now for Week 15. I did not be able to record yesterday, so I missed yesterday's pick. Um, I did pick the Rams in the straight up and to cover their 2.5 point spread. So if that does mean anything to you, I did get those picks right in what was one of the worst games I think I've seen in a long time. 12-6, no touchdowns. It's just boring. Just boring football. But we'll get on to Sunday's games. We'll get a little more action on those ones. We're going to start in Cleveland, where the visiting Kansas City Chiefs are 5.5 point favorites on the road in Cleveland. And I will take the Chiefs in this one, in the straight up and in the spread as well. I think Kansas City is just locking down certain criterias. All right, so you got the division, you get a playoff spot, you got the division. The next is the number one seed, and Buffalo's right on their tail. So I think KC needs to win as many games as possible, and I think they'll get that here tonight, or in Sunday's game, I should say, taking on Cleveland, who's going to be interestingly possibly at 3-11 after this one. Cincinnati Bengals, I guess, are still holding on to a playoff spot. Are they technically eliminated yet? I think if they lose this one, they're technically eliminated, but there's no way they're even close to being a playoff team. They're 5-8 right now. It's pretty much over for them. Technically, considering they are still on the bubble, that's how that one looking here. I guess the wild card race is still in there. They have a 3% chance to make the playoffs, but we've seen it happen. We have seen it happen with teams that you win a few games, other teams lose a few games, you start to pick up momentum. So I think that's where Cincinnati is in their season right now. So I think I'm going to take them over Tennessee in this one, in the spread and in the straight up. That's 4.5 point favorites for Cincinnati. Washington Commanders will be traveling to New Orleans to take on the New Orleans Saints. And that one, I think I would have gone New Orleans in the spread if Derek Carr was playing, but it's not Derek Carr. Back to the carousel there they have in New Orleans of quarterbacks. So I will trust Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders to get it done in the straight up and the spread that is set at 7.5 points. Commanders will take the sweep there in the spread and the straight up. Next game on our list here is the Baltimore Ravens traveling to take on the New York Giants, and the Ravens are 14.5 point favorites. I'll get it out of the way. Ravens are going to win this one straight up. I am going to take the Giants in the spread simply because I don't think that it will be that far off from a game. I think New York will stay within 13 points, 10 points, somewhere along there, and then they'll get some, late points or whatever. So I'm going to take the Ravens in the straight up, of course, and the New York Giants in the spread in this one. Dallas Cowboys are underdogs to the Carolina Panthers, where the Panthers are favored for the first time, I think I saw it yesterday, in 33 games. Yikes. With that, I am going to ride with the Panthers. I think you have to ride with the hot hand right now. Dallas is obviously not that team. I'll take Carolina in the straight up, and I'll take Carolina in the spread. 1.5 point favorites. I mean, anything can happen, really, if you're Carolina. You want to see another good game for Bryce Young, exploit the Mike Zimmer defense of the Cowboys, and just have a really solid day. Panthers will take this one in the straight up and the spread. Next game on our list here is the New York Jets. Will be taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jets are 3.5 point favorites over the Jaguars. And the Jags, of course, I mean, I think you're counting down the games towards Doug Peterson getting fired. If I'm just kind of surprised he hasn't yet. I will take the Jets in this one. The Jets are 3-10. Jacksonville's 3-10. Mac Jones is playing for the Jags. I'll trust Aaron Rodgers to get him a win or two here. So it'll be 3.5 points. I will take the Jets in the straight up, and I'll take them in the spread. Another playoff implicating, game that's got playoff implications on it. The Miami Dolphins will be taking on the Houston Texans. Texans are pretty much going to lock up that AFC South here pretty much, I think, this year. I think everyone knew that was coming. But the Dolphins right now, they're currently at 16% chance to make the playoffs. Not too far ahead of the Bengals there. I will take the Dolphins in this, or excuse me, the Texans in the straight up and the spread. It is 2.5 points. That's favoring Houston. I think Miami would have been in a much better spot if Tua would have been healthy the whole season. I've said that if you go back to my early podcast when I did my NFL predictions in the seasons. I think I had the Dolphins winning the division, and that's just assuming that Tua would have played a full season because he has been having playing lights out since he really got back from the concussion stuff. So it's like you hate to see it if you're Miami. You might finish the year 8-9, 9-8, somewhere in there. And I think that's a team that could have won 12, 13 games this year if you had your more so guy in there. But injuries are a part of the game. Houston will take this one. They're a better team right now. Houston will take this one the straight up and the spread at 2.5 points. 325 game. We got the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Denver Broncos. Colts right now not too far up from the Dolphins here. They have a 25% chance of making the playoffs. Where Denver right now, I think they're currently in the last wild card spot, 73% chance of them making the playoffs here. Um, Denver's got one of the best defenses in all of football right now. Any team coached by Sean Payton pretty much has one of the best defenses around. Bo Nix has had a stellar rookie season. Colts are fresh off the bye week, if that means anything, but I don't really think it does when you're at home in Denver in December. It's going to be cold. It's going to be brutal. I'm going to take the Broncos in the straight up and the Broncos in the spread. Easily football's best game this week is the Buffalo Bills taking on the Detroit Lions in Detroit. I mean, we got the probably likely MVP in Josh Allen, and then you got the Detroit Lions, who haven't lost in 3 months. That's really that kind of going there. Um, Lions right now have already locked up a playoff spot, still fighting for that number one seed. The Bills right now the 2 seed in the AFC. So both teams need to win this game to help themselves out one way or another. But a team hasn't lost in 3 months, and they've won and lost. They've won games they should have lost. They've lost games they were right in there. Detroit right now knows how to win in multiple facets of the game. I'm taking the Lions at over to cover the spread at 1.5 points. That favors Detroit, and I will take them in this straight up as well. The Battle of Pennsylvania is our next game here, as the Steelers will be traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Russell Wilson's been playing pretty lights out for Pittsburgh, helping them get back to where they want to be. But Philly, man, tough place to play. It's got a tough defense, and I think that AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts need to settle their beef this week. So I think Philly needs to have a game to prove themselves they are for real, better than just a little playoff team here. I'm going to take the Eagles in the straight up. I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles in the spread. 325 game as well. We're still on those games. We have the Patriots taking on the Arizona Cardinals. It's in Arizona. Arizona's kind of fallen on a little flat the last few weeks. Disappointing here. Now they are 6-7. Look at the playoff spot right now. Currently a 7% chance of making the playoffs. You look at that right now and you think to yourself, that's not really going to happen. Whereas I think the Patriots have already been eliminated, weeks ago. But I will take the Cardinals in this straight up. I think they need to win this game. But I think it's going to be a close game. I think Chad Ryland's going to be a good kicker this week for Arizona to have on your fantasy team. So I will take the Patriots to cover the 6.5 point spread, but I will take the Cardinals in the straight up. Our last 325 game on the day is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to take on the LA Chargers, where I think right now, currently, Tampa Bay holds the 4 seed in the NFC playoff picture, and the Chargers right now fighting for a wild card spot in the AFC. Man, Baker Mayfield has done a lot this year, keeping Tampa Bay at a cool level. I think he's not gotten a lot of credit for doing that, and he's had a fantastic year. But I think in this one, a John Harbaugh-led defense has shown that it can be, really threatening for a lot of quarterbacks and a lot of teams, especially Tampa Bay is a little vulnerable. Not having Chris Godwin, not having some other guys, and making some other players stand up. And Tampa Bay didn't look all that great last week against Vegas, so I will take the LA Chargers in the straight up, and I will take the LA Chargers in the spread for this week. 3 more games on our play here. We'll start with Sunday Night Football. The Green Bay Packers will be traveling to Seattle to take on the Seattle Seahawks. Where right now the Seahawks are the 3 seed in the NFC. And I think that that's a good team they're playing, but I think Green Bay is a better team than Seattle. I think Green Bay's scary. There's a part of me that I think Green Bay is better than Detroit. And I know they've lost to them head to head, but I think that Green Bay in a playoff spot, ride or die, could be able to play better than Detroit. That's just my opinion there. So I will take the Packers in this straight up, and I'll take the Packers at spreads at 2.5 point favorites. Two Monday night games on our agenda here. The first one, the Chicago Bears will be traveling to Minnesota in the whiteout game, where the Vikings are 6.5 point favorites at home at US Bank Stadium. Simply enough, Vikings are a much better team than Chicago, better defensively, and if Sam Darnold throws for 5 touchdowns again, or even has a remotely similar game, it's nice to see Justin Jefferson have a bounce back week and Jordan Addison have a breakout week once again this season. Addison's been on a tear the last month, you could say. I'm gonna take the Vikings in the straight up, and I'm gonna take the Vikings in the spread and get the Vikings at 12-2. The last game of our agenda here is the Falcons taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. I think it's Desmond Ridder starting for the Raiders. Even though the Falcons are struggling, that alone tells me I should take the Falcons in this one. So I'm going to take the Atlanta Falcons in the straight up and the spread in this one that's set at 4.5 points, favoring the Atlanta Falcons. So that's our weekly pick segment here on the Green Zone podcast. And that's all I have for you guys today. So I wanted to thank you for tuning in today. This one will be going up on Friday. Usually we go on Thursdays, but today's a little different today, so we'll step away there. So I want to thank you guys for listening here. Thank you all you Green Zoners out there. I'm Kama Green signing off with the program. We'll see you guys next week, probably on Tuesday. We record our final episode before the holiday season, so we'll see you guys next Tuesday.